Welcome to Bernie Forest Power, or BFP. In the following video, we'll be covering policies and procedures that are intended to provide you with a safe working environment during your time at our plant. It is important to remember that any violation of these policies and procedures may result in the removal of you and/or your team from the plant. We strive for zero injuries and accidents at BFP, and we want to see everyone go home without incident to their families each day. BFP reserves the right to conduct searches and inspections on plant property or property owned by an individual that has been brought onto the plant site. All activities are monitored and recorded by video cameras. Parking is provided for all contractors. BFP does not assume any responsibility in connection with the use of the parking areas or any risk of loss or damage as a result of using this facility. Vehicles allowed access into the plant shall not block any emergency egress routes. While you are working here, we require that you sign in and out on the contractor log for accountability in case there is an emergency. This contractor log can be found in the control room. As a contractor, you will also be assigned a BFP employee as a primary contact for communication with plant staff and permits. We are proud of the safety culture we have built and work to continue making strides with improvements. We ask that all foremen or supervisors be involved in conducting daily crew meetings with our operation and maintenance teams. During these meetings, we encourage everyone to provide input about safety and coordination. By doing this at the beginning of every shift, it allows everyone the opportunity to understand what's happening and creates time to get any permits you need for the day. Make sure to pay attention to your work site and keep it clear of trip, fall, and pinch hazards. We expect all of our contractors to keep our facility in good repair and free of hazards that can be easily mitigated with simple housekeeping techniques. There are various locations across the plant site that contain emergency equipment. Fire extinguishers, hoses, and monitors are located throughout the plant and identified in red. Fire extinguishers are meant for small fires only. Anyone with current fire extinguisher training is authorized to use one in the event of a small fire. If one fire extinguisher does not put the fire out, evacuate the area and notify the control room so they can call the fire department. If it did put the fire out, please make sure to let the control room know that one was used so that it can be replaced. There is no smoking allowed anywhere in the plant. There are no exceptions. Any smoking must be done in the turnout at the corner of the entry road and the main road. There are also eye wash and safety showers identified in green throughout the plant. Emergency phones are available to contact the control room to report an emergency. To do this, lift the receiver, dial 108 for the control room, and inform the control room operator of the type and location of the emergency. If there is not a plant phone close by, you can still contact the control room by dialing 530-335-5023 and entering extension 108. You can reach local fire and police services by dialing 911. In the event of an emergency that requires an evacuation, the control room operator will announce the location that everyone will need to use through the plant paging system. This will either be at the East Gate or admin building parking lot assembly areas. Immediately leave your work area and proceed to the assembly area designated by the control room operator. We ask that you follow all plant caution, notice, and warning signs. These signs will help you wear the correct personal protective equipment and stay safe during your time at BFP. Various forms of protective equipment are required at all times. These include a hard hat, steel-toe boots, safety glasses, hearing protection, and gloves. The addition of a high-visibility vest is required when walking or working in the fuel storage area. As a contractor, working safely is your responsibility. Knowing the area you're working in and paying attention to your surroundings is key. If you have questions or need something, feel free to ask your BFP employee contact. It's important to remember that valves, equipment, and breakers are not to be operated except by BFP employees, and then only when the proper permits are in place and completed. A big part of your safety responsibility is being aware of your own physical and mental state. Working while impaired because of alcohol or drugs, including marijuana, is strictly prohibited. Firearms and ammunition are strictly prohibited. Any fighting or aggressive behavior will not be tolerated. Anyone found to be in violation of these policies will be removed from the plant site. When you're using any electrical equipment or tools to perform work, they must all have GFCI protection and be properly insulated and grounded. This is important to protect the integrity of the plant equipment and yourself from electrocution. All accidents, injuries, near misses, emergencies, and unsafe conditions must be reported to the control room operator as soon as possible. At any point, any employee, contractor, or supervisor has the authority to stop work if they witness a potentially unsafe act. Any preliminary reports are due no later than the end of the work shift and turned into the control room. Further investigations will be conducted by BFP personnel. There are many hazards throughout the plant site that you need to be aware of. Almost all of these hazards come as a result of the different processes within the facility. There are electrical hazards related to high and low voltage, chemical hazards due to anhydrous ammonia, acids and caustics, and temperature hazards from steam, water, and combustion. Let's talk about anhydrous ammonia. It's a colorless gas with pungent, suffocating fumes used within our process to assist in controlling emissions. When handled improperly or in the event of a leak, anhydrous ammonia can be immediately dangerous to life or health. As a liquid, when anhydrous ammonia is released from its container into the air, it expands rapidly, forming a large vapor cloud that will tend to hug the ground. Some of the symptoms of anhydrous ammonia exposure include eye, nose, and throat irritation, breathing difficulty, wheezing or chest pain, pulmonary edema, pink frothy saliva, and burns, blisters, and frostbite. Exposure can be fatal at high concentrations. In the event of an ammonia leak, evacuate the site by staying upwind of the ammonia storage area. Report the leak using the plant phone system and dialing 108 to get the control room operator. Contractor employees are restricted from entering the ammonia tank area unless access is required to perform their assigned work. In order to obtain that access, the control room operator must complete the proper forms before work can be started. Other chemical hazards that are found on site include natural gas, which is delivered throughout the plant in underground piping and in some above-ground piping located just north and east of the admin building, as well as in the boiler building. Diesel fuel is stored on the north side of the plant just west of the cooling tower, and 93% sulfuric acid and sodium anhydrous, which is caustic, is stored in containments inside the turbine building. You have the right to know the hazards of the chemicals you work with and around while here at BFP. We have safety data sheets for all of our chemicals. You can speak with the EHS supervisor or the control room operator for details about any of the chemicals we have. We require that you have a safety data sheet for any of the chemicals you bring on site, and be willing to share that information if someone wants to see it for review. All of your containers need to be labeled with the contents and hazards, as well as personal protective equipment requirements. If you bring any chemicals on site for use during your work and you do not use all of the contents, please remove those chemicals when you leave. Do not leave them here. Any corrosive, explosive, compressed, or flammable materials must be properly stored in the correct type of cabinet and the contents clearly labeled. During your time with BFP, you may find yourself in need of a forklift or man lift. None of this equipment can be used without authorization by your BFP employee contact. We require all of our contractors designate the specific employee or employees that have been trained to operate that equipment and provide proof of training on those pieces of equipment. In conjunction with the employee list and training records, a signed form stating that you, the contractor, accept all responsibility for the equipment must be filed before you begin. Fall protection is a common part of working operations at BFP. Never take chances and climb or work without proper fall protection equipment for any reason. It will not be tolerated. We require our contractors to follow all OSHA and Cal-OSHA regulations during their work activities. While working in areas where there is a potential fall from 4 feet or more above a lower level, fall protection is required. Make sure to use anchor points that are rated for 5,000 pounds or more as a tie-off point. If you have any questions about a particular tie-off point, stop work and ask. Inspect all of your fall protection equipment before every use, and never mix rigging equipment with fall protection equipment. Contractors are required to provide their teams with their own fall protection. Knowing the hazards associated with the work being performed is a very important part of preparing for your daily tasks. A JHA, or Job Hazard Analysis, is used at BFP to help achieve that knowledge level and must be completed for all work involving permits. All contractors performing work anywhere on the BFP plant site are required to obtain a work permit from the control room before beginning their tasks. Hazard delineation is key in making sure not only you are protected from hazards on your job site, but other contractors as well. It is important to remember that you are responsible for providing and keeping all fences, temporary sidewalks, guardrails, barricades, warning lights, signs, and other safety guards necessary to protect all personnel in good working and visual order. Yellow caution tape and red danger tape are acceptable barricades as long as they are used for the correct application. Yellow caution tape is used for communicating that there are potential hazards in the area, and for any traffic through the work area to use caution and be aware at all times. Red danger tape is used as a way to delineate all traffic away from your work location completely. If red danger tape is used to close off an area, stay out unless you have prior authorization from the person who hung the tape and tag. If you choose to proceed through or remove danger tape from a site without authorization, you will be subject to removal from the job site. Another part of our safety culture is the lockout-tagout program. This program allows us to protect everyone working on a piece of equipment or an entire system. Before you perform any work on or in equipment and spaces, you must have the equipment locked and tagged out by a BFP operator. Lockout-tagout permits are used in the control room. Our isolation points are all locked with a red lock and accompanied by a danger tag. The keys for each of those locks are returned to the control room and placed in the lockbox associated with that permit. Everyone who will be working on that equipment or in that space must sign the lockout-tagout permit and install their own lock and danger tag on the lockbox. The key to their lock stays with them until they sign off the permit at the end of their shift, or when the work is completed, whichever comes first. We do not issue locks to contractors. You must provide your own. There may be times when a contractor foreman can sign on to a permit and place a lock onto the lockout-tagout box that represents his crew. In these cases, his key must be placed into a separate contractor lockbox, which allows his crew to then place their personal locks onto the lockout box. Following this process will sustain the integrity of the lockout permit without overwhelming the control room lockbox because of multiple contractors signing onto the same permit to perform work. At this point, the contractor foreman is responsible for the separate lockbox and remembering to sign off the permit in the control room when he removes his lock. Never attempt to operate or defeat a component that has been locked and tagged. All of our lockout-tagout procedures follow OSHA and Cal-OSHA regulations. Lockout-tagout permits can only be obtained through operations, and only those contractors who have been trained on Bernie Forest Power lockout-tagout procedures may be involved in establishing a permit. Unauthorized removal of any lock or tag is grounds for immediate removal from the plant site. At times, the work you perform will fall under a hot work permit. Hot work is considered any cutting, grinding, or welding activities that involve the use of portable gas or arc welding equipment, or involve soldering, grinding, or any other similar activities producing a spark, flame, or heat. If the work you will be performing falls into this category, you must obtain a hot work permit before proceeding with your tasks. After you have obtained your hot work permit from operations and before you begin work, you must post the permit in the area where the hot work is being performed. The area around the hot work must be inspected for combustible materials and removed or protected prior to any hot work. Make sure to wear all appropriate personal protective equipment and make sure your work doesn't impact someone in your area by using protective barriers if necessary. If your work is being performed on an elevated platform, make sure people and equipment are protected from sparks and slag below you by laying down enough fire-retardant drop cloths to cover the area properly. While welding, do not leave the electrode in the holder when the weld is finished. This is a fire hazard and will not be tolerated. In some cases, a designated hot work area can be established to allow hot work activities to be performed without a permit. These areas must first be inspected and cleared using a rigorous checklist before they can be established. Check with your BFP employee contact if you feel this is something you need to have set up. Work inside of confined spaces are common at BFP. All of our confined spaces are identified by danger signs that read Danger, Confined Space, Entry by Permit Only. Do not enter a confined space until it has been authorized for entry and a permit has been issued, even if the door or hatch to the space is open. All confined space permits are issued through the control room, and contractors needing to enter the space must be signed onto the permit for that space and the entrant log before entering. No contractor may enter a confined space if they have not completed confined space training within the last year and can show proof of doing so with a certificate or training card. Continuous monitoring with a calibrated air gas monitor is required for all occupied spaces. This is usually done by the confined space attendant, and the readings are recorded every hour. At any time and in any space, if anything smells, feels, seems wrong, or a gas monitor alarms, leave the space immediately and notify the control room of the incident. If a confined space has more than one means of entry and exit, the opening being monitored by the confined space attendant is the only opening that may be used for entry and exit. Waste is a common byproduct of the work you do. For that reason, we have a few guidelines around waste generation we want to share. Any waste that is generated by you must be coordinated with the EHS supervisor to ensure the proper storage and disposal of the waste. Any batteries, aerosol cans, paints, metal shavings, and fluorescent tubes do not go into the trash for any reason. You may not discharge any type of waste without prior approval from the EHS supervisor. As we close, remember, safety is not an option. It's part of the requirements to perform work at BFP. If you see or are involved in a near miss or incident, report it so that we can address it and make sure that someone doesn't get hurt in the future. All contractors are required to write safe work permits and job hazard analysis for the work they perform, and communicate with the control room operator or their BFP employee contact. You will now be presented with a short acknowledgement form that we would like you to fill out that states you have completed this orientation and understand the information we have covered. If there is something you didn't understand, please ask before you complete the form. Work safely today so that you can come back tomorrow.